Oh, hey, I guess we started a little earlier. I guess my
Whoa.
finger tapped it, but that's all right. Usually it goes a little longer, but anyways, that's almost the whole new opening music intro. If you guys dig it, just give me a message and I'll give you my SoundCloud link. And if you like what you hear, I can send you some freebie tunes. But anyways, that's my band Luminous. And today, that's a little teaser. They'll hear the ending of it at the ending outro, whatever the fuck they call them nowadays. But anyways, I've got Jesus Mike here with me. Used to be a member of the Atheist Roundtable, and you've gone on to do your own channel with a friend of yours called Axioms on something. Or what is it?
Axioms on Trial.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Which I have a link to, by the way, below, guys, if you want to check that out. You've had like T-Jump on there and some other folks as well. Basically, Mike, what I do is I talk to people about their journeys away from whatever belief systems they were once a part of and the ups and downs of that and how the dominoes fell to sort of get you on that track from exiting, and also what led you up to becoming the atheist activist you are today. So why don't you take us back and take us on that journey, man?
Yeah, I actually thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, because a lot of times when I go on or talk to people, it's usually like very specific. Hey, do you want to talk about like the modal ontological argument? And come on, and it's very, very specific and very pedantic. But it's I love that kind of stuff. But this is really cool for me because I feel a lot more free and less constrained, and like not every word's going to be kind of attacked, in what you're saying. So it's kind of like a relief for me. So I appreciate that first and foremost.
No worries.
But second thing, shout out to the Atheist Roundtable. They're doing some awesome things. I guess, I would start in my process. I've always been non-religious. So I grew up in a household where my mom's Catholic. I think my dad is kind of, I don't really know, but they were
Catholic light.
yeah, exact diet Catholic is probably the way to put it. But I had a very fortunate upbringing where my parents, I think a lot of people probably come on the show and they go through this whole family kind of thing, where there's this kind of predicament between telling them and potentially being outcasted and things like that, where I had this very fortunate, be skeptical, we're not going to raise you in what we believe. It wasn't even presented to me like that. It was just literally the most freedom I could have when it came to that topic. I think at like 9 years old, I think I like spent the night at a friend's house, and when they said they were going to go to church, I remember like knowing what it was, but not fully, Did
you go with them?
Yeah, I went with him, and I actually remember one time he like freaked me out because my mom was coming to pick me up from their house that night, and he asked me if I was saved, and I'm like, what do I need to be saved from? As a kid, I'm like monsters, like what's going on? I was legitimately like my eyes wide, and like, what do I need to be saved from? And I remember him running around, kind of being like, Mom, we have to save Mike. We have to save him. And I'm sitting there as a kid, like, what the hell is going on? I don't know what this means. And I remember even my mom picking me up is kind of like, come on, let's go. Like, let's hurry up. So I've had a very understanding, like, family when it comes to that. They're not into like the woo woo and all that. Maybe that's a lot of why I don't buy into it, because it was never really pressed on me in that fashion. So I was very fortunate in that regard. I think it was around like 14 when I took a biology class, and I remember the teacher
right for puberty.
Right. Yeah. Like ninth grade. And I remember the teacher coming in, and I remember him having a very, very monotone voice on the day we did evolution. And I'm not like a very good student. Like, I don't really care about stuff at that point. I'm not huge on necessarily doing my homework and gaining knowledge wasn't like cool to me like it is now. But I remember him coming in and having a very just like, I'm forced by the state council, board of whatever to teach the theory of evolution. And it was very just like, you could tell he's like, I don't buy into this. I'm forced to teach this to you. And the whole class is like grunting about it, kind of like, oh yeah, evolution's. Mind you, I live in Georgia. So I live in the deep South. And
Sure.
everyone around, I just remember like looking around and being like, I didn't understand the even at 14, I was like, what's so bad about evolution? Like, you know, like I kind of remember hearing about this in maybe like 7th grade, like what's so bad, and not realizing how conflicting it is, you know, to their worldview in Genesis. And so
they don't even compare. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And it opened up my eyes, and that, I think that moment alone of kind of like, well, you guys had a problem with like everything else we didn't want to do. Like we didn't want to learn all this stuff. We weren't down with chlorophyll, last test. Nobody was down with that. But why right now is everybody really against evolution? It was just like struck me. And I remember talking to my friend Sam, and she was an agnostic, and she's kind of like introducing these concepts and terms to me. She's very, way smarter than a 14-year-old should be in that regard. And I remember for the first time identifying with what she was telling me in a way where it wasn't like in school where someone tells you about an album and you just kind of pretend and go, yeah, I've heard of that album, because you want to fit in. You want to kind of have that experience of having that identity. I think that was the first time I actually identified with what she was saying in a very unforced way, where I was like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my worldview. I just don't, I don't understand this stuff. And so that was a huge catalyst for me to start thinking about this. And then soon after that, I had a friend pass away at 14 in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
And so that really started making me like, why are we here? It was after my friend died, I was kind of like, why are we here? Am I going to see him again? Like all these questions just start, I was like depressed from not having answers. And so I made, I remember asking my mom to buy me, because I had, started like trying to, read the Bible and things like that. I remember my mom asked my mom to buy me The God Delusion by Dawkins, because, somebody had told me, well, look at, other sides. And the term atheist kind of scared me in a sense for some reason. I don't know. I thought I just had like a misunderstanding of what that meant, I think, at the time.
You probably had heard some things that others, religious folks, had probably said about them and thought, well, that doesn't sound like me. Maybe
not realizing that it was exactly me, the entire time that I had never been convinced in these things.
Well, they love to add baggage to the label. So
yeah, exactly. And that's you nail it right there. That's exactly what it is. It's, some people it's baby eating or Satan worshiping, and it's like, whoa, okay, that's nothing to do with atheism at all.
No.
But yeah, so I think that was a huge catalyst for me at that point to kind of question all these things. And so a lot of people now, because I do a lot of biblical or textual criticism, especially like right now, I'm really into like Q source and attacking how that's just a really horrible hypothetical narrative for people that are trying to say that Matthew and Luke basically got these sources or this from a different source.
Right.
And so that all became interesting to me, stuff, because I genuinely gave it a shot. I really wanted to know if I'd see my friend again and these kind of things. And it was just so not convincing from the first time my eyes were on it. So I never had that process of thinking there was some God or anything. It was just really off. Whatever God hypothesis was presented to me was just kind of like, really? It was always just like, that's what you believe in? Like, can we test this? Like, I've always just been like, well, how can I know that this is true? Like I have to have some kind of, argument here. And so I think a lot of people mistake that as hesitance in my life of just like, you don't want to believe. It's like, no, I put too many hours into these types of conversations because I care about life. And from the perspective I think it's finite. And so if this is an actual potential answer, I want to know that before what I believe now is finite is up. I wouldn't want to be wrong. And so that kind of just really for me made it going forward something that was a passion of mine just because it was fun to do. And from a distance, since I wasn't really touched by religion in any way, I saw how it affected other people, especially in high school, seeing some of my friends who were believers or had family members that were like pastors, and having to hear them as atheists explain to me the struggle, because it was just so, I didn't even realize, that was a whole world where, you're fearful of losing your kind of community. I was kind of always outcasted in a sense. So I was always like, whatever about that kind of a thing. But when you're already in the group, for that reason. I mean, it's not like you can just, well, I don't believe anymore, but I'm still going to come and hang out with you guys at church. You know, that's not probably going to be your options there. So I saw this whole other world where it affects other people.
How often did you go to church? Like just with friends once in a blue, or?
Yeah, so I went with my buddies. I don't want to give it a full name. I want to dox them, but my buddies Ryan and Brad, his brother. I'd go with them every now and then when I'd sleep over at their house. But I dated a girl around, I think I was 15 or 16, and when I had pretty much established I'm an atheist, and most people who knew me, knew that I was an atheist because I was one of the, black sheep, so to speak, kind of in a southern high school. But I dated this girl who she knew from, the get-go that I was an atheist, and I knew she was religious, but it didn't kind of bother us in any sense. And so I went to church with her every single Sunday that we dated for months. And it was always weird because I was the atheist boyfriend that her family really didn't approve of. And I remember taking one of my friends who was an atheist over to that house, and he was just kind of like, dude, they're Nazis, and how they're the way how freaking, because it was very, very next level traditionalist type of fundamentalist Christian.
Wow.
But
6,000-year-old earth believing type Christians.
Yeah, exactly. Because I remember being on the phone with her actually, and her saying something like, well, we believe we I would want to explain this to you. I was like, yeah, you believe in God, Yahweh. And she was just like, whoa, and I was just like, yes, I've tried to learn this kind of stuff. I think she was more and so impressed that I was, seemingly being honest about trying to see if these beliefs were true. And so I think she thought by, having me come to church and stuff that she could potentially have me see the light, so to speak. But all I would, every Sunday, I'd be just looking around, seeing people doing this, just being like, what is going on? I had a buddy come down from New Jersey. One of my best friends come down from New Jersey, and they have our heads bowed and kind of, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever you do there, they had our heads bowed while they're talking, I guess.
Silent prayer, usually. It
wasn't even really a prayer though. And you'll hear why, because the guy just starts talking. At the time it was MySpace. I don't even know if Facebook was a thing. But we have our heads bowed, and he's just and I want you to keep your heads bowed while I talk about this. I went and I spent long nights looking at members of this church. I looked at their MySpaces, and I saw them in young women in bikinis. And me and my friend are looking at each other while our heads are bowed. Why is this dude up at night looking at people in his churches?
Bikini pictures.
Why is he? Yeah, bikini. This is it was so weird. I just remember every moment of that was the most cringe thing for me. Cause it's just why are we oppressing people? Why? Why can't we do? At that time, I was super hippie, so it was just why don't we just as a tree loving hippie
do what they want? Yeah. Like that meme where you go grabs them by the lips and says, "Shh, just let people enjoy themselves."
Yeah. Exactly. And it's funny because I was a hippie around that time, super, I was kind of the guy in high school that I'd always have an apple, a Camelback book bag with the water pouch thing, probably some leaves in my hair from, my trek through getting to school that day. I went out of my way to kind of be that person, as a kid trying to find your identity. And so I think right now, what really kind of gets to me is the spiritual community, because I used to believe in that kind of stuff, the third eye and that kind of stuff. And so those claims to me are so almost on another tier of just woo woo and just ridiculous.
Brown eye count.
Yeah. Well, it's any type of this any magic where you're trying to say that you can do something that's kind of beyond the natural. My ears perk up right away. And I used to buy into that stuff, and actually I did an experiment.
Me too, brother. Me too.
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to ask you. I was I don't know where you are in that. I mean, I wouldn't want to offend anybody's position on it, but I just don't buy into that kind of stuff. And I've done experiments that I actually want to.
I have I Ching cards. I have tarot cards. I have all kinds of shit like that. A Ouija board somewhere. I used to be right into that. I was a Wiccan for a while. So
that's so people probably scoff at me, but the main kind of content that I do is on TikTok. A buddy had told me, about all these kind of really bad Christian apologetics, and I was like, I'll go check it out, and then not realizing that they have hundreds of thousands of views, more views than YouTube videos are getting, and it's influencing a lot more people. So I felt, well, I got to do something, or at least respond to kind of these videos. But the more I saw was these spiritual videos, Ouija boards and those kind of things. And so I got really fed up and was like, really, it seems that nobody has any falsification at this point. Like, nobody really actually cares to test these claims. They're just like, excuses are out the door. Any kind of, I'm not going to believe that until nobody has that in that mindset. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, I believe it. And I thought I could kind of exploit this. And so if you go follow my page at Atheist Jesus, Atheist Jesus on TikTok, I created another page 2 nights ago called 5D Developer. And I made a series of videos and I came up with this idea, by the way, making pizza in my kitchen, just giggling about how could I potentially just see how gullible people are. And I'm just laughing to myself.
You had me at pizza.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was making atheist pizza, as Pasta Mike likes to call it.
Oh, chopped up baby.
Yeah, exactly. And so I go into my room, I put a black sock over the light, and it turned it off and creates this kind of cool effect on my camera. And I start talking about how I was hired by TikTok as a developer, which my background is in programming. And so I'll be actually getting a job certificate, and then my associates in programming, as well as pursuing a bachelor's in computational biology. So I have some limited knowledge to be able to just make things up that sound maybe to somebody smart, but it's really not. It's just incoherent strings of language.
They'll buy anything, Mike. They'll buy anything.
Sure, but I felt maybe I add a little salt and pepper to it, right? And so I tell them, and so I'm kind of going on the spot, but I have this idea in my head, and I just start saying, I'm a developer for 5D consciousness, and essentially they hired me on as a way to have the sensors block your pineal gland so that you don't become woke. It's kind of like this whole thing. And I record the video. I record the video. I turn my phone off. I think I hang out with a buddy for a little bit. I come back. I look at my phone. I have 30,000 views on the video. I'm not lying. You could go look at this. It's a 5D developer for TikTok. 30,000 views. I've gained 3,000 followers, which, by the way, on my Atheist Jesus, for reference, my Atheist Jesus TikTok, I've been working at for 6-7 months, having videos where I'm going over pedantic things like the difference between Australopithecus africanus versus afarensis, just very minute things where it's I'm doing a lot of legwork to try to provide some education, and I'm getting 7,000 in 6 months. I just make up some nonsensical claim about being a developer for TikTok and trying to take down the spiritual community, and I get half the followers that I've worked for in not even 15 hours with 70,000 views, and people messaging me saying, I believe you. How do I turn it off? How do I get the access to my pineal gland back? Right? Gets me now to my entire intent was I could take this really far, but I started worrying about people's mental health. I'm I'm taking advantage at this point of people who have some severe mental issues. And so I start to have this kind of guilt as soon as I do it, where I'm just going to go ahead and pull the plug on it. I don't need to take this any further. I've made my point, and I'm going to tack on this whole idea. And so
you don't want to become the pricks that are doing it for real. Right?
Exactly. And so I did a video of I reveal my face, and I kind of pull the mask off, and I go, Project Astral is entirely made up. I just wanted to show people why it's, anecdotal testimony is not enough for you to believe a claim. And in fact, it's very dangerous. Look at and I know a lot of you didn't believe me, but look at the 3,000 people that followed me in 15 hours that believe me and are sending me messages asking me how gullible they are. And this is the reason why I want to do this, is to show that when you guys are making these claims, someone who could have some mental illness could really legitimately take it seriously, and they could harm themselves or somebody else. And I couldn't believe that it actually got pulled off the way that it did. But, it's damn, this guilty consciousness of mine, it's I could have probably taken it and made a bigger point of education, but there's kind of a line there where you have to, it's not fair to potential people that are actually going to believe, what I'm essentially asserting is a nonsensical lie.
Yeah.
But
that's unbelievable that you had that many in such a short time. Because I guess it's almost as if people are just desperate to believe something like that, something outside of the natural world. It seems like,
yeah.
And I've often wondered. Well, I mean, I used to believe in some of that stuff too. Although, I don't know if I really ever believed it. I just thought, oh, this is cool. This is interesting. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And I was dating girls that were witches and shit like that. So I became a Wiccan, but I don't know if I really ever really believed it or just was going along for the ride. I would say more so the latter.
Sure. I mean, I think it's so like, there's two ways that I look at it. It's like, you don't want to be so skeptical where, you're now a solipsist and now you just don't even know if you don't even know if you exist. Right. Like you don't want to go down that route. I do classify myself as like an epistemic solipsist, not to be contradictory, which is like more or less just knowing that when you get into a philosophical conversation with these people that try to attack that whole, how do you know you exist? It's like, from that standpoint, I'll use that framework. I always think that's like a nonsensical, stupid argument to have.
I do too.
But that's the other end of it. When if you're so skeptical or you believe so much, then your brains just fall out. So it's like on one end of the spectrum, you're just so gullible that you can't even have control of your brains; they just fall out of your ears, And then on the other spectrum of that, you're just so skeptical where you're not going to accept anything. And I see those two things, but it's just to me, it's so much easier. Everybody can imagine an idea, right? We all can do it. I can come up with any idea I want that I think is true. How do you show it's reflective of reality? Can you do that? You could do it in a priori or conceptual, not like you could do it in empirical and science. Like if you have a claim that you can actually do these things, then show it. Otherwise, it's indistinguishable from somebody's imaginary claim down the street. And if I can't distinguish, the guy who's yelling at people who's naked on the corner of the street claims versus yours, then you have a problem. If it's not, if both of those are not reflective of reality, you have a serious problem on your hands. And I think that's a super important thing for people to evaluate when they make certain claims.
For sure. Absolutely. It's tough if you believe something. There are certain things that you can believe that aren't easy to demonstrate. Like when you say you're in love with someone, how do you demonstrate that? Sure, you can buy them all the trinkets in the world you want and constantly be hugging and kissing them, but does that really say that you love someone? Not really.
Yeah, man, and that comes down to, and this is a problem I have when I have conversations with people. Especially with arguments, a lot of people don't really realize how we use language and how it's misused, especially in these kind of debates, especially when you get into the more philosophical realm. People can, I don't know if it was Matt Dillahunty or somebody, Murdershed Steve kind of passed this quote to me secondhand, but language is our bitch. We can do whatever we want to it. But it isn't the actual reality in which we experience it. It's our modeling, right? So how we're trying to model it. I always represent it as, I have like two different types of ways that I put it. It's like a mirror, essentially, when you use logic and language. It's just a mirror you're trying to kind of put in front of reality. And you don't want it to be foggy. You don't want it to have cracks. You want it to look as most reflective as possible. Or if it's like a painting of the tree versus the actual tree itself, you want that painting to be as accurate as possible. And I don't see why people have this problem with understanding language and logic as descriptors, but it's what gets in the way of these like presuppositionalists or these people that kind of, you have to have the basis for logic. It's like, no, we're creating these things as models of these relational behaviors. If you don't understand that rudimentary concept, you're going to think it's like prescribed and interwoven into the fabric of reality. And it's not what we see. You start to become a person that thinks the number one is an actual thing. And I had this conversation with somebody last night who was trying to tell me that one is a thing when it's like, it's a descriptor of objects. I mean, this is what math is, what logic is. This is what we do in programming. It's no different. And It blows my mind.
Funny enough, though, even if we didn't exist, math would still exist. We just developed a system to understand it and use it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like and I always like to kind of use the example that when you go back to like if you go to towards Planck time, you're going to see all these equations kind of fall apart, and that's because this isn't to say it's demonstrative like down to its most zoomed out level. It has the attempt is to model reality, and when somebody says we can fix it, it's no different than a painter realizing that the painting of their tree is not actually accurate to the tree, and they're going to fix it. They're going to make it, model it, make it look more reflective of reality.
Mm-hmm. But also, Planck time isn't structured anyway. So, I mean, you don't expect anything around that time. And I know it really, folks, I know that it was really, Planck time is like, what is it? Like not even a nanosecond. It's
I don't.
But
we have
there's
a
zero
guy
structure to it, right? It's just
we have a guy who comes on our show. My co-host's brother, who's a quantum physicist. Not a quantum physicist. He's a quantum physics professor at a university.
Nice.
And he's really specializes in like is it black hole cosmology or something? Like he's very specific in like black holes and things like that. Mm-hmm. But hearing him talk about those kind of things is just like absolutely, it goes over my head.
Mind bending.
But I try to pretend like I understand. I'm just like, like we did a video with Inspiring Philosophies kind of takes on quantum physics. And if anybody who actually looks at quantum physics watches my questions to him as we're watching this, I probably look like a buffoon. But I'm just so interested that it's like, if this is a stupid question, just tell me. But it's like, I kind of, I feel like that's just the best way sometimes to get, you have to kind of go that route to get to
there are no stupid questions.
That's what my teachers all told me, but I know that was true.
It's only questions that might seem stupid to people that are well into the know on things, but there really are no stupid questions.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think the more I actually have
point of questions is to learn. So
and knowledge wasn't like cool to me at all until I mean, it was a cool thing, to know things, but I don't think I appreciated it until I had a debate with a flat earther. It was kind of off the cuff, just like talking to somebody. And I think this is what really got me into the way that I am now with fact checking and looking into like I'll have whole documents of things. So if I watch a video, like I know I probably won't retain the information so well that I'll try to jot down as much as I can so I can go back and look at it while I watch the video. But what sparked that for me was having this conversation with somebody, and I couldn't defend a globe Earth to save my life. I looked like such an idiot. I could have been convinced on that day that the Earth was flat because of how poor of a job that I did, and it bummed me out so much that I was like, I wasn't prepared. How do I defend this? I looked like an idiot, and I went in and I looked. I'm sitting there going, fuck, maybe the Earth is flat. And I'm looking, I'm looking and doing my research, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, no, obviously it's not. And now I understand why it's not. Not even that. I understand these things like equatorial mounts, and I can ask the person, like, how does an equatorial mount work on your, flat plane, or how do you account for gyroscopes? And now it's cool because now it's like, you're not even just, it's fun. You're showing off to the flat earther, whoever your opposition is, that, dude, I know more than you. Stop, like, you're wrong, and that became very like enjoyable for me. If something is true, I have a lot of people are like, oh, you want to just prove somebody wrong, or you want to look better. It's like, no, it's not had anything to do with the ego. If I died tomorrow, the Earth is still going to be round. But I'm going to fight for the fact of that. Fuck me for a second. Like, I'm sticking up for the truth, and nothing to do with me. But I have no problem taking some emotional value from that as presenting you the truth. I mean, I'm just going to take that as me being a human and loving that dopamine, I guess. But
sure. But one of the things I always say is, if I'm wrong, I want to know that I'm wrong, because once I've been demonstrated, or it's been demonstrated I'm wrong, then guess what? You're no longer wrong.
Yeah, right. And that's actually a really good thing to say, because if someone convinces me, especially in the regards of the theist atheist, predicament. It's like, if you convince me a God exists, I'm still going to remain a skeptic, because that process. And I still will consider myself like a fallibilist, or someone that thinks, knowledge you can have knowledge, but you could ultimately be wrong. It doesn't have to be predicated on this absolute kind of certainty. It's just reasonable degrees of certainty. I don't have to be absolutely certain that you have a dog. I mean, if you tell me you have a dog, and I know who you are, I'm gonna trust that. But if you told me, you believe in a Jewish guy that walked on water and died for our sins, I'm gonna raise my standards of evidence a little bit. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do. But for some people, it's not. And
I want to know what fucking shoes he was wearing when he was able to walk on water.
It was probably some like those Skechers, man. I always wanted them as a kid. I'd watch Figure It Out. It was
Remember wheelies? So they had the little wheelie heels.
Don't even get me started. Actually, believe it or not, I'm the inventor of a few Healy tricks that are still not even on their website. They have videos of how to do these tricks that me and my friends sent to them when we were like 14 years old, 13 years old. We came up with tricks called like the Joe stall, and just random thing. We created a document and we sent it to Heelys.com. They put it on their trick list, and I shit you not, Neil, that is professional Healy tricks that I'm not getting credited for, and I want my money and I want my recognition.
Damn it.
Yeah. So when you see these kids doing like, check out my Joe stall, I invented that trick. It was me.
I don't know, buddy. I remember a commercial that I saw on TV years ago where they show this guy sitting in his chair and he's going, I got this great idea and I'm going to get it patented. And then they flash to another guy who's got the exact same idea. Another guy who's got the exact same idea. And then another guy who's got the exact same idea. And it's just a matter of a race to see who gets the patent or whatever first.
Yeah.
So did you? Or because I used to
think
that kind of shit too. But then I realized, no, that's probably not likely.
That's kind of like that Albert Einstein joke, right? Because he was I don't know what you call him, a patentist, but I think he was somebody that did that. I think Family Guy kind of joked at that, where this guy's like comes in and he's like, I present you Smith's general relativity, and then it just has Einstein just like hit him over the head and grab it and run away. It's just like so ridiculous.
Look at this. Pasta Mike's giving me shit because I said hi to Chris first. Hey, I featured your comment, Pasta Mike. You want any more? You got to pay up, pal.
No, he's in that Pasta Mike. He left me a pretty interesting voicemail this morning. I gotta call him back. It's pretty hysterical. With his permission, I want to use it for clips. It's very clip worthy. I'll put it that way.
A lot of what he says is very clip worthy.
Yeah. If you know him, then you know.
Yeah, he's a funny guy.
Yeah, and that's actually.
I love how he calls me a meat castle, Canadian meat castle. Yeah, you don't.
He's like, he's the Vince McMahon of the atheist community. If you think about it, like he helps out a lot. He kind of mingles between the groups. He helps out Axioms. I know. I think him and T-Jump kind of have like a working relationship now. But really? he's provided some microphones and stuff like that to people. So he's like basically the Vince McMahon of the atheist community in a sense. Stirring up all the drama.
Utah Cast just showed up and said, what's with all the mics?
Right.
I got a mic. Mike's got a mic.
I got a mic. Yep. Right there. But yeah, so in regards to the evidence thing is always when I kind of want to at least touch on that a little bit, is like something for me that's really important is how people have value their standards of evidence. Look
at him.
I said I don't even have his number. Yeah. I lied to pretend to be cool with Pasta Mike, so I look cooler by just it's like the ugly girl standing next to the slightly uglier girl so that she looks a little better or whatever. It's kind of like what I do with Pasta Mike. If I just stand next to him, I feel like I'm kind of cool by association or something. But
I don't know, dude. I've seen your guitar riff videos on fucking Facebook. You're definitely cool in my books.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I mean, it's like when you're 16 playing guitar, you kind of get that, oh, you play in a band. But then when you're 29, you play guitar, it's like, oh, you play in a band. It's just like it totally changes very quickly.
The 604 mic.
That's funny.
And apparently this isn't even their final form of Mike.
No.
Little Dragon Ball Z reference there, kids.
Yeah. My final form is just like completely hairless.
Is it?
Like a naked mole rat. Yeah. I actually had one of those Snapchat filters. My brother pointed his phone at me and it makes you bald. And it was, dude, I couldn't not see it ever again. It was just one of the worst things I'd ever seen in my life. He was like, you could rock being bald. I was like, no, I will never in my life. It just was so creepy looking.
Yeah. I don't know. I shaved my head once and twice. And that was enough for me. But mind you, I had hair like this both times I shaved it. So I did it for a reason. The first time I was working as a tow truck driver, and we all did it. A lot of us there had fairly long hair. None of them had it quite as long as mine at the time, but we all decided to shave our heads and donate the hair to cancer for wigs, or wigs for cancer, or whatever. And I did it again some years later and sent all the hair for the same thing so that wigs could be made for people with cancer. That's back before my hair was gray. So.
That's an awesome thing that you did. Mine's getting gray. Actually, I keep getting people telling me that that's just kind of one of those things where it's like not something you want to hear at 29, but it's like I guess I'm just gonna roll with it, see how it goes. Hopefully they have that all figured out by the time it becomes a problem for me. So I'm gonna look like a wizard. It's probably a good look, but.
We're gonna have to start calling you like Gandalf or something.
Yeah,
it's funny because like you did a couple of memes of me like a wizard with Gandalf sort of shit with the hair down and rock your hair for tots. Is that a new one there, X?
But yeah, well, one thing I wanted to at least touch on, just kind of before I forget. I feel like standards of evidence is just one of those things that's super important to me. That Agreed. People don't really, I don't think they really, if you're not in the kind of conversations about these things, I'll mention that to people and they'll kind of like not even consider that as a thing. Like you can have, different standards of evidence given the proposition. And I always use if I swam with sharks, you may or may not believe me. I mean, most people probably like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take your belief. But if I start saying I'm flying with sharks or something, it starts to become this like really weird gray area where now you're like, I need something more than what was previously okay. Just about the language of just saying, hey, I swam with sharks. It's like, now I need a little bit more. And everybody does that. But I wish that people would do that with their kind of deeply held beliefs. Which is, I think, why the street epistemology thing is pretty cool for people that aren't into those types of conversations. It helps them kind of just break down the kind of the questioning of how they got to where they're at. A lot more, I guess, small, like bit by bit, I'd say.
Well, evidence or standards of evidence. I mean, obviously, there's different standards of evidence for things, depending on what it is, obviously.
Yeah.
But things like anecdotal stories, to me, just aren't evidence. I mean, sure, some of them might sound great, right? I mean, I tell some, too. I tell about the time I met Eddie Vedder, didn't know who he was. And I tell about the time I had a coffee and muffin with Ozzy Osbourne when he was shopping in the mall where I used to work. And people can believe me or not. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I experienced these and these little things. These are just a couple of examples, and but I'm not gonna. Or let me put it this way: I don't. It doesn't really matter to me if people believe that or not, because it's not outside the realm of possibility. Let's put it that way. It's nothing that's in the supernatural realm. This is something that could actually happen, and it just so happened that Zach Wilde, who was Ozzy's guitar player at the time, came into our store and was flipping through the bargain bin tapes, which I thought was hysterical. I didn't even know who he was at first because he was all greasy and long, greasy blonde hair and wearing ripped jeans and like a collared shirt that was kind of shitty and then he plops down this fucking platinum Visa that says Zachary Philip Wilde on it, and I'm like, wait a second, are you Ozzy's guitar player? He goes, yeah.
That's all.
Is he here with you? I'm like, Yeah. He's like, yeah. I'm like, he's just over at Muffins or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
I'm like, Steve, I'm going on break. Deal with this. And then I went over and Zach came with me and we sat down and talked for, I don't know, about 15 minutes or whatever and shot the shit with them. And they were in town recording a few of the songs for the album that had No More Tears on it, I believe, way back in
me and my buddy always, if I go over there and drink with him, he's always just like, no more beers every time we run out. So it's like a big
all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, because I use a similar example. Sometimes I talk to people, I'll ask them like, if, because like what you're saying, there's an implicit basis, right? So to say I met Zach Wilde, it's like, well, okay, Zach Wilde probably meets people. We could, he's a person. Yeah. People meet people. Yeah. So nothing extraordinary there. It's like he's, coming into a store. Yeah, people buy. So there's nothing there that's like out of the ordinary. But what I'll usually ask people like, take the closest person that you trust, like your wife, or in a lot of cases, it's probably not your wife. But for some people, it might not be your husband. It might not be, but whoever it is, you might have somebody that you trust, your brother, whatever it might be. Sure. And a lot of times that's always the hesitant part. Someone's always like, well, actually, I don't trust my husband, or I don't trust my wife. It's like, okay, well, whoever it is that you trust, just for the sake of the example, and they'll, if they tell you that Tupac was risen, they met Tupac, like, honey, or I talked to Tupac. He sang me, he rapped a song. Like, I know it was him. Would you believe them? And every time, the person's going to say no. No matter how much you trust this person, you're never going to go, yeah, I believe the person that tells me they saw a risen dead person. But in the case of like trusting Paul or trusting the Gospels or anything like that you're 2,000 years removed from, now you're willing to trust that source, but you're not willing.
Those Gospels are far from the original source anyways.
Yeah, and it's like, but even if we just say they're like original, like just for the sake of it, or that it is Paul, you never met Paul. You're 2,000 years removed from this, and you don't even trust the person that you trust the most in your life about a claim about a person that you do know existed. And so, like, to me, I think that's like everyone kind of scoffs at it with like, yeah, risen Tupac, but it's like that is a more believable claim in a sense to me than it would be. That a risen person came and he's also the creator of everything, but he's also the son of the creator of everything. It's like, to me, it's like you have to get some kind of standard there. But
indeed, I agree.
Otherwise, like I said, I mean, your brain's just gonna fall out of your ears. You can believe anything anyone tells you, and you have nothing that's gonna stop you.
Exactly, and the problem with that is, and this is a great quote that I use quite often. Anyone who can make you believe absurdities can also possibly make you commit atrocities.
Yeah, I've heard that. I mean, the way I look at it is like if you teach children that it's acceptable to believe that magic is potentially an answer for a proposition, then you're going to wind up having adults that also think that, solving problems with just saying magic did it or explains it or whatever. That is if you allow that one fundamental flaw as a child or wherever it is, wherever you start to let yourself kind of take falsification and just punch right through it and say, screw it. Once you allow that, you can allow that to leak into every belief, every claim, anything anyone says. You can now let that leak into it because you've already done that. You've already allowed it, to pass through. So what's going to stop that in any other claim that someone says? But what's funny to me is that it seems like very special pleading and selective when someone's like, well, no, it's like that in my religion because it says so here. But it's like, but that's the exact same thing with someone else's claim, but you don't give it the same. There's nothing that separates your guys' methodology here. It's all the same. And if you're not going to accept that method, or I'm sorry, that conclusion as well, then it's just special pleading at that point.
Yep, exactly. I mean, Carl Sagan got it right when he said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Right. So
yeah,
I mean, if you're going to make a claim that's not really extraordinary, then I don't really have a problem. I'll take your word on it. because I try not to befriend people that are known liars. So if you're going to make a claim and it's not extraordinary, then the chances are you're probably not lying to me. But if you're going to make a claim that's super extraordinary, like, hey, I just got abducted by aliens last night, I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to need to see some evidence for that claim. But if I got pulled over by the cops and they put me in handcuffs and held me in the back of their car for an hour, which has happened to me, then I'm not going to say, really? Well, I'm going to need evidence. Right?
Yeah,
like something like that, right?
And I think it gets worse than that for some religions. Like I know a lot of the thing is, and theist and religious people kind of give atheist crap for this, especially now, that they're kind of going that agnostic atheist category. I think that is like a relevant thing to say as a distinguisher. Like I would say the general question of God, sure, I'm agnostic, because you could just define it in so many ways that it would be unfair for me to just say all variations are impossible or something, because I don't know how I would investigate every single claim. But when you come down to like Christianity or Yahweh or Allah,
any religious claims,
yeah,
in
but
my opinion.
Well, those specific ones, I'm actually a Gnostic atheist. I actually, in fact, think those gods do not exist. And I wish more Christians would think. I wish more Christians would, or Christians. I'm sorry. I wish more atheists would be more comfortable with accepting the logical impossibilities that are presented within the Bible, looking at the cumulative case of how Genesis is laid out, and how it does not actually comport with the reality we experience. And if you just go throughout every bit of the text, all the way up to the fact of the triune God and it violating identity and non-contradiction excluded middle, you should come to this conclusion. And I wanted to ask you, like, do you think beyond that, do you think the absence of evidence is evidence of absence? Would you hold that to be true?
I think it's situational. I think we may not have evidence for something. Like we had all this mathematical possibilities of black holes, for example. But we didn't actually have evidence of a black hole.
Sure.
So in this case, is the absence of evidence evidence of absence? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
But at least black holes are, plausible. At least they always have been in the minds of astrophysicists and cosmologists. So when we finally found out that they were real, then we no longer needed to be in that position where, well, we don't really know, but mathematically they should be there. Mathematically, everything in the Bible just doesn't fucking work. So in a situation for something like that, maybe the absence of evidence for a deity, I might go along and say, well, then in this case, it might be evidence of absence. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's old saying or whatever. If God made us in his image, how come we're not invisible? Right? So
yeah. Well, I think that's especially when people argue for like divine simplicity, which is like that God has no parts. It's just kind of like immaterial. But I think
what does that even fucking mean?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
I hear that all the time. It doesn't exist in our space and time. And like, well, unfortunately, in order to exist, you need to have time and space.
Well, in order to, it's even like worse than that. In order to, when someone utters the phrase God created space and time, created is a verb that implies time, right? Creation, you have to have time. So the statement is saying
existence is necessarily temporal.
Well, it's essentially the statement is going, in order to instantiate time, I had to use time. It doesn't even make any sense. The argument is presenting somebody a squared circle. It's like, that's not a thing. Like, you're literally just contradicting yourself. It's like, my argument is a married bachelor. It's like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. It's literally logically incoherent. But yeah, I think you're right about the evidence of absence thing, because it's like, it is circumstantial. I would say in examples of like hopefully this doesn't trigger any YouTube thing, but and the examples of like a bomb squad, right? Like, you're never going to know that the bomb isn't there. I mean, you're going to have to conclude. But at some point you're going to have to. The bomb squad's going to have to conclude that the absence of evidence for the bomb is going to essentially have to be evidence of its absence, and then and so there are circumstances where that is the case, but I bring that up because I think it's worse for like these religions specifically, because it's not even that there's absence of evidence. The evidence of the claims are not only like wrong, they're like just demonstrably not true. The only way you can reconcile these, especially claims of creation, the only way you could reconcile that is by giving an allegory or metaphorical kind of interpretation. And I think that's funny that once the science starts creeping in and surrounding, these beliefs, the only place that you're left to hide is in poetic language, where you can do whatever the fuck you want because you have no bounds, because it's just whatever goes in poetic language. That's why poetry sells the way, or not poetry, but that's why those poetic themes in movies and music, and that's why that's such a huge thing. Because I mean, look at Jordan Peterson, for fuck's sake. I mean, his whole thing is the archetypal narrative, the whole, this good story of good versus evil. That sells because it's part of what we experience. But that's how that's how people con you on things. And that's how people take advantage of you, because, it's easy to play on those kind of strings.
Yeah, absolutely. You know Richard Madsen, right? He's got something.
Yes, we've had a lot of conversations, but like, I love Richard as a person, but his views on this I can't even argue with, because they're so like metaphorical and talks about different planets and things, where I'm just like, dude, I don't. It's exhausting for me. I'm like,
none of that's been demonstrated either. But anyways, let's get on to this. I want to talk. Oh, look, two hippies. Hello, atheist troll.
Hey, man.
What's going on, dude?
Hold on.
Anyways, Richard,
I forgot to turn my bong off. Hold on.
We dismiss the Bible not based on biased people from or whatever you're saying here. We dismiss it because much of it has been demonstrated as being false. That's why we dismiss it. And there you go.
He said, how many times will you disprove something a Christian says before you reject their reading of the Bible? I mean,
I reject the Bible all full on out. The old, the new, the Quran, doesn't matter. Any holy text, I reject all of it.
I'm open to all interpretations, and none of them have been convincing thus far.
Right,
but,
exactly.
And that goes back to standards of evidence. If you're okay with accepting very flimsy poetic language and platitudes to sneak in there, that's fine. I am not, like, to me, it's like saying, like, if you're okay with not playing very good, zone defense or man-to-man defense, or you just kind of want to let them score a touchdown, that's fine. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to play the game. I'm here to bust my ass and make sure that there's no separation from the corner to the wide receiver. I don't want any of that. So that's kind of like, I think when people say, like, when I'm going to allow this kind of platitude, poetic language to change what it's actually saying in the book, then at that point, I view you as a rookie compared to a veteran, in the respective field. That's just how I see it.
I think he responded to me somewhere there. In whose reading frame?
I think it's funny, though.
My own reading frame. I've read the fucking books cover to cover. Read the New Testament twice. Read the Old Testament. Fuck, I don't even know how many times.
Yeah, I would just go off of what it actually says, because that solves the subjective. So wouldn't it have been God's fault that he knew that, hey, I'm going to give something that can now have as many interpretations as many people as I decide to create? Doesn't that seem like a problem that the all-knowing thing should have probably worked out, before it was like, hey, if I put this thing out there, there'll probably be, how many people are there? Oh, 7 billion at one time. Oh, so there'll probably be 7 billion different interpretations potentially. Probably not a good methodology, so.
Exactly. Yeah, it's troll. The best way to share a dire message is through poetry.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great. How come I haven't had this atheist troll live person on my show before?
Dude, yeah, Jeff's awesome. He lives like about an hour. Found out.
Oh shit, it's Jeff, right? Never mind. I've had him on. He's old news now.
I didn't know Jeff was on. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I had him on. Jeff had him on a little while ago. I keep forgetting that that's his YouTube name.
Well, yeah, it used to be his actual name. So
let me just stroke your ego a little here. Sorry, buddy. You're a good-looking guy. You were on my show. You had a lot of great things to say.
He says God is the author of all confusion. You could just say Neil is the author of all confusion at the moment right now. It's like,
pretty much.
I'm just kidding.
Pretty much. Yeah. Well, dude, so you really didn't have a lot of shit to go through, I guess, with the whole family, knowing that you're atheist and stuff like that. Is your mom still like a practicing Catholic? Does she go to church, or does she kind of just worship from afar kind of thing?
It's like a mixture of both, but I think I kind of failed in that aspect to kind of explain that. This topic gets me excited, so I just kind of jumble it all up together. But if I could actually kind of rewind and go back there, I would say that the first time I told my mom I was an atheist, you know, she definitely cried, you know, so it wasn't like
really?
So it wasn't like it was necessarily like everything's okay or cool. She wasn't, I think at the time she just didn't really understand my position and all that kind of stuff. But
many don't.
But it wasn't like mad or you know what I mean? It was kind of just like, I think not understanding the word and hearing atheist, kind of just that pit to your stomach kind of vibe kind of thing that people get when they don't understand. That it's not like some rebellious kind of act or something, you know, of I'm chilling with Satan or something, you know, kind of thing.
I heard Satan's pretty cool. So,
but now we talk about it all the time. She asked me about like philosophy and things like that I'm interested in. So I have some of the coolest parents in that regard. But my brother likes to give me a lot of shit, you know, like if someone's like, you know, if it's always like, if something make you mad or something, he'll be like, the only thing that makes Mike mad is religion. And he'll always like sneak that in there, but I have no problem with it because it's true. So, you know.
Well, I wouldn't say that religion in and of itself makes me mad. A lot of the doctrines involved in some of these belief systems do make me mad because they advocate for killing people just because they're a non-believer, or B, they're a member of the LGBTQIA plus community, or they're from a different tribe, you know. So, and you know, Almighty One says kill them all, right? So, and that kind of thing pisses me off. So,
I hate any alternative belief to how the world operates that isn't demonstrable. I don't even care if you made it up on the spot. I hate it because it was, to me, it's like you just exercised a waste of time, in like a misuse of understanding truth. You're showing you don't value an actual process. Like you're not even valuing epistemology and how you would even get to knowing something. So it makes me mad for the person. I'm not mad at like them. I'm just like, I'm mad that because of these types of beliefs, they inform actions. And now me and you have to talk about how local states, you know, only like how long ago was it that my, you know, my roommates, for example, could go get married, you know, because they're lesbians, right? It's like all this kind of stuff is predicated on beliefs that inform actions, you know, women's rights and things like that for abortion. I'm pro-choice. I don't think abortion's like I don't think that's like a moral act by any means. I think it sucks. You know, I think it's a horrible kind of thing as well. And I'm probably different than most people on the pro-choice side, but I'm always going to value the woman's rights,
right to choose. Absolutely.
Over a fetus. I still think there's definitely like an moral implication there. I definitely think
technically they're a parasite. So
I guess depending on how you define it, but
true. And I have a similar position on that to you.
Yeah.
In the way that I was adopted as a baby, right? I was born to a Christian couple. They weren't married at the time, but they ended up pregnant again a year later and ended up getting married. They figured it was a sign or whatever. But I was given up for adoption at birth. And 10 days after my birth, I was brought home, or 11 days, pardon me, brought home Halloween Day by my parents that I've known and grown up with. They're Jewish. So another kind of nail in the coffin of all this, to me anyways, is you know, if the only way to God is through Jesus, then why did fucking God have me raised by people who don't believe in Jesus? Yet I was born to people who do believe in Jesus. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And on that, being adopted, I'm pro-choice as well, but I'm also, if possible, to have the child and give it up for adoption, being pro-life-ish a little bit in that respect. And you can do it, and it's not going to scar you or harm you, then do it. Because give that kid a chance somewhere else, even if you can't take care of it or whatever your reason for not being able to have the child. I mean, if it's medical reasons that you could die, then obviously abort.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I
But,
mean, I'm all about the choice.
Yeah.
It's just, I just like to kind of highlight that I still think it's a sad situation,
Mhm.
depending on when
Agreed.
we're talking.
Yep.
Because at the very beginning of that kind of a thing, I don't think I'm not a big like conception kind of guy right there where it's like, oh, that's a horrible thing. At any point, there's like a, definitely a point at which the circumstance changes, but it wouldn't even matter then. For me, it's still at that point. It's always the woman's right. And simple like arguments in philosophy that you can use about like hooking people up to each other and using their body can illustrate the point very quickly that the person whose body is being used reserves the right to those decisions.
Exactly. I agree.
But
Welcome, Messenger Reveals.
but the second part of your question, I don't think I answered. Or I might have, but yeah, they kind of practice from afar. They don't really go to church or anything like that, but there's like crosses and things at my parents' house, so
Sure, it's cultural almost, yeah.
Yeah. My mom's Italian.
I'm part Italian myself.
My dad's British, so it's like kind of,
I'm part British too.
Nice.
Sounds like you and I are almost. I'm French, Italian, Welsh, and British. So, well, English and Welsh. So British.
Man,
a little bit of Scottish in there too.
I always wish I had like those, like that mix of things. Sometimes I wish I could say all those things, but if I could just get a little bit of like Neanderthal in me, I'll be happy. Like
we all have it. Oh, I hate to break it to you, but we all have it.
But I mean, just like a substantial amount where I'm like, just I'm huge into primatology and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's interesting. Really,
maybe I'm biased and I really do just want to prove that we're monkeys even without the evidence. I'm just kidding.
Well, we're not monkeys. We're related to them, but we're not monkeys, dude.
Yeah, no, yeah. That as a computational biology major, it drives me nuts having to explain to people like what classifies, a hominid and how we are. It's like when they're like, so we came from a monkey. I'm like, no. So our closest living, ancestors come from the genus Pan. And that would be chimps and bonobos. And it's like people just have this gross misunderstanding of like how that phylogeny tree works in regards to the primates. They don't understand how that branches off. It's just they think it's like this linear path that we just kind of like started standing up, and it's so embarrassing. But
no. There were a lot of hits and misses, a lot of trial and error, and we were the ones that won. Let's put it that way. Neanderthals came close, but we ended up wiping them out.
Yeah, and it's funny because you can actually go look at.
Although they live on in us, in a sense.
Sure. I actually had this conversation with somebody that they were trying to make this argument about, and this probably works for any creationist, by the way. You could do this with, but you'll probably get them to admit that a mouse and a rat are of the same like biblical kind, and then just let them know about Clint, who was a Western chimpanzee, if I get this right, Troglodytes varus is the actual. I got that right. Yes, I'm gonna pass my freaking my exam.
You got me on this one.
But yes, Troglodytes varus was a Western chimpanzee, and they sequenced his genome like 2 years, I think, after the human genome. And in comparison to that of a mouse and a rat, we were actually 10 times, our base pairs align. We're 10 times more related than a mouse and a rat. So if a creationist has a problem with and says that they agree to these kinds, it's like, well, that's interesting. So like, why do you separate us from the primates then when we are genetically speaking? It's just like it blows my mind. But
Messenger John, we weren't engineered for monkeys. That's silly. Who did the engineering?
Wait, someone said we were engineered from.
We were engineered for monkeys, but it doesn't make us relate. We are actually related to monkeys. We are apes. We just are the smartest of the apes.
Yep. Yeah.
We figured shit out. And actually, a friend of mine the other day goes, well, how come we're not seeing more apes evolving and people coming out of the jungle with new types of humans? I'm like, because that's not how it fucking works, dude. Yeah. This took billions of years. What's wrong with you? Well, millions.
Yeah. Taxonomy will help you out there a little bit.
Yeah.
If you just have a little bit of understanding. I mean, because people just think they're like, oh, they look at homologous structures and then that's how they kind of put them on there. It's like, no. Because if we just looked at general homologous structures, we would see like the Australian mole rat and the North American mole rat. We would say, oh, these are homologous structures. No, they diverged longer ago. They have analogous structures. They arose very similar traits in completely different environments, and we can see this in so many different species that's why like molecular homology and like comparative genomics is a really good way. You don't have to even just go by like scent glands or whether or not we have a with whatever a visual kind of cue you'd go off of. It's like, no, we do this on the molecular level.
Sweet. I don't know. I eat screw and poop too. Well, not so much the screwing anymore, but also YouTube. So there's a little bit of that there. So
screw tube.
Or a little bit screw tube. There you go.
Taking money out.
Called Pornhub.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, you know what? We've gone past the hour, brother. So why don't we we do a little bit of an after party? I know you can stick around for a little bit.
Yeah.
But Mike's got to study, guys. He's got homework to do. All right. So we're going to let him off the hook. He can stick around for 15, 20 minutes for the after party. So what I'm going to do is extend an invitation to anyone who would like to join Mike and myself for the after party. Just let me know through Twitter or Facebook or whichever method you can to getting a hold of me. And I will give you a link and you can come and jump in with us for a little while. I'll probably have this after party going for about an hour and a half or so, but I also have some plans a little later as well because it's Monday and it's football. So I got to watch some football later.
Wait, you're a football guy?
I like football. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I'm a huge fantasy
Seahawks
football
fan.
guy. Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, I'm a huge fantasy football guy. So, it's like huge love of mine. I need some major points. I need like 60 fantasy points. It's probably not going to happen, but I'm going to pray, and if God answers it, I'll probably still not believe. But yeah,
it's just ask him to leave a note or something that he was there. Maybe that'll help.
We have fake fantasy gods in my fantasy league. Ours is Mark Gormley. I don't know if someone knows who Mark Gormley is. He's the songbird of our generation, and I suggest you type in Mark Gormley at any point on YouTube and go witness our God that gives me great fantasy football streak.
Anyways, Mike, man, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, brother. I thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, man.
For the hour and a bit. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Definitely, guys, go follow him on Facebook and check out him shredding on the fucking for some hardcore metal shit going on there. It's
Axiom's on trial on YouTube if you want that. Yeah.
Links are below. You can find him on TikTok. You can find him on YouTube. You can find him on Facebook. And you can also find him, where else did I put there? I think somewhere else.
Atheist Jesus, some TikTok, I think is the username, yeah.
Something like that. Anyways, all the links are down there. So go and give Mike a follow. And definitely sub to his YouTube channel. I've already kind of perused a couple of your videos. The T-Jump one kind of jumped out at me right away. T jumped out at me. But because he's a friend, so I wanted to check that out for sure. He's a smart guy. Anyways,
he's really smart. It's a good conversation that we had.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a great one with him too on my show here. But anyways, guys, thank you very much for joining us for this show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We will be doing the after party shortly. There is a link to the after party below. And again, let me know if you want to be involved. With the whole pandemic thing right now going on, remember, guys, to be well and be safe, and above all, be kind. And thank you to all my amazing patrons. It's because of you guys that the show keeps improving and getting better, which is the same thing, really. But anyways, until next time, guys, like I always say at the end of these shows, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we will see you guys next time. Oh, there we go. Outro music. If you dig it, give me a message. I'll send you a link to hear more.